Ladies and gentlemen, hit subscribe to this channel right now. Your super chat is greatly appreciated. Also, I do have another channel, a stock market crash channel that I'm building. Watch and stay tuned for more segments, live streams, and uploads on the stock market crash channel. Again, your support via super chat is greatly appreciated. Let's get started. Bloomberg, Trump hush money judge says he'll decide on recusal by next week. PBS. Judge delays ruling on presidential immunity in Trump's hush money case. The Supreme Court victory on immunity, just like the unanimous 9-0, even the liberal justices, overturning of the Colorado ban. Two major victories leading to especially the immunity victory that I said would happen. I said both would take place, and I also predicted the stock market crash. I'm not right about everything, but the analysis has been pretty spot on lately. Let's get to the economic analysis. The stock market is directly tied to Trump's chances. Trump will, I think, 95% chance, 99% chance of victory in November. There's going to be a catastrophic market crash, possibly October, late September, maybe next week, maybe tomorrow. I think it'll be before November 5th. Hit subscribe to this channel. Let's get started. Any judge that has serious conflicts of interest will likely want to recuse. He could have simply said he's not recusing himself, but he recuses. The unconstitutional guilty verdict in New York is overturned immediately. The reason is because you cannot have a state convict Trump of a federal crime when the DOJ and the federal government and the FEC dropped the hush money case, and former FEC chairmen Hans A. von Spakovsky, Bradley Smith, and Trey Traynor have all stated he did not commit a crime. He could have paid Stormy with dollar bills. Speaking of dollar bills, there's going to be a crash. There is already a crash. We're seeing it in real time. I think that is I think that's what is the greatest reason any judge would recuse him or herself from a case they know was unfair towards Trump. I think that a recusal is a pretty good likelihood of a recusal. I'm not predicting anything, but when it happens or if it happens, it's because of the market crash and because of the certainty of Trump's victory. Hit subscribe. Your super chat's important. Thanks, everybody.
Here was some of the scuttlebutt we were hearing at the end of the trading day today that some are hoping to see sooner rather than later, that the Federal Reserve isn't only inclined now to start cutting interest rates as soon as the September meeting, but some are thinking even sooner, a cut before a meeting. That would be very unusual. I want to talk to Peter Tuchman about that, New York Stock Exchange trade. He's at the New York Stock Exchange. Peter, how did we go from watch inflation, Federal Reserve, to watch what you're doing because we're now in a recession, Federal Reserve? How did we do a 180?
You know what? Look, as we remember, you and I talked on Friday whether they were catastrophizing the situation. I think we need to really address the fact that this perfect storm really has been circling and marinating all weekend long. So we obviously had the Fed that did not give a lot of clarity on Wednesday about when that cut was going to be, whether it was September. Then we had Friday's economic data that came out, which showed a boost in unemployment. That was not good. Then we had a weekend full of fear-mongering around the Middle East and Iran attacking Israel, and then you had the Japanese market go down the largest amount since 1987, and all of that together added to this crazy fear thing. We saw the VIX spike up above 65 today, which showed fear, as your prior speaker said, not panic, but fear. And so I don't think this is much a reflection on the economy as much of a perfect storm around all these components that are happening in the market. Fundamentally, nothing that much has changed economically since 10 days ago when we were trading at record highs across the board, and everyone was saying there's never another down day on Wall Street. Nothing fundamentally has changed. Okay, a couple of components have, but when they're all, the market can handle virtually any.
The only fundamental, or the only thing that's changed is that more and more investors, more on Wall Street, are looking and saying, hey, there's a recession on the horizon. Maybe being at record high valuations Literally record high valuations is a bad thing. Maybe Warren Buffett selling a whole bunch, hundreds of, I think billions or hundreds of millions in stock is foreshadowing a very, very negative environment in terms of the market. Now, when I say that the market is tied to Trump, the stock market going down is not only bad for 401ks. The stock market tanking, which is what it's about to do and what it's doing, it's about to tank even further. The reason that it's terrible is not just because of stocks, ladies and gentlemen. It's because of the political ramifications. When the stock market tanks, you could possibly have crypto Ponzi schemes, Bitcoin Ponzi schemes go under. They could then tank hedge funds. Small regional banks can go bankrupt. There could be lines where people are trying to take out money, like Silicon Valley Bank and other banks a couple of years back. So you saw that during the Great Depression. You know, a bank can go bankrupt, and what you're not covered in FDIC, you lose. So if you have more than $250,000, you'll lose that money. Okay? If the bank isn't bailed out. And there's no way of knowing whether Biden's going to, or Harris will bail out 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 possible, God forbid, regional small banks. So you need to make sure that you're in a bank that is too big to fail. I'm not giving you investment advice, but one, I think a person needs to make sure they're in a too big to fail bank, because if they're in a small bank, or what is considered a small or regional bank, it could go under in this crash. It's not just the stocks going down. It's the ramifications. It's the unintended consequences of a drastic fall in the market. Like I said, you could have hedge funds go under. And hedge funds and cryptocurrencies, they're tied to a lot of banks. Commercial real estate is tied to major banks. If it's tied to a small regional bank or smaller bank, that's not a good thing. It could go under.
Anything when it is fed it one or two things at a time. But when you've got a weekend plus this storm plus the Japanese stock market crashing, basically, I think that's what caused today's sell-off.
Yeah, the question is whether it's an overextension or overdone. This VIX you refer to as volatility index, it trades on the Chicago Board Exchange, and that has tripled just since Thursday, a sign of the panic that's ensued on Wall Street. Do you think?
By the way, the VIX index, the volatility index on Wall Street, it's very amusing. This is all like theater almost. It could go from 27 to 60 in one day. So it's like if somebody had their emotions, like emotional swings. From one day they're calm, the next day they're, completely angry, and, how are you to know? You don't know. So it's kind of like looking up at the sky and say, oh, that's the VIX. Oh, it's raining today. Oh, okay. The VIX says it's thunderstorms and lightning. Oh, it's calm and a nice day today. There's no way to you could wake up tomorrow, the market could tank, it could go up 1,000 points. The market could go up 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 points, 4,000 points, 5,000 points from now until 2 weeks from now. And then 4 weeks from now, it could go down 6, 7, 8,000 points. It's just that, there's no rhyme or reason. That's why the inflation, interest rates, high inflation, high interest rates, global instability, all of these things tied directly to Biden and Harris. Okay, they have done it's almost as if they did everything possible deliberately to make everything worse.
It is justified, though, because the employment report, to your point, it did show jobs gaining, just not as much as thought. The unemployment rate did go up, fourth month in a row, to 4.3%. That is still a relatively stable unemployment rate, but I guess fears have gotten ahead of just stepping back and looking at the big picture.
I don't think it's justified. We've watched this market climb in a really responsible fashion, right? We had some short pullbacks along the way, like April and May and June were solid months. So this is not, it doesn't feel bubblish at all. It just feels like when you reverse in a market that's pretty frothy, even from a technical standpoint, you're going to see people sell the market. I think today's sell-off was a lot of retail. Look, the big players are not selling into this sell-off. God, people, institutions and hedge funds are not really, rotating out of equity.
But there's a great channel called, his name is Steve Van Meter, and he's awesome. I watch him and some other great channels in the finance or stock market sphere. And he talks about the machines, and when the machines have sell orders. So it's interesting. From what I understand, I might not be understanding exactly what he's talking about, but Steve Van Meter, subscribe to his channel. He has 218,000 subs. He should have like 2 million subs. He's fantastic. He's been talking about this downturn for a long time. But what Steve Van Meter talks about a lot, he uses the phrase, well, when the machines have the sell orders, when the algorithms, a lot of these major hedge funds and big players like this gentleman is talking about, when the market goes a certain distance downward, when stocks hit a certain point below what they are now, it's an automatic sell. So the market tanks, let's say 20%. Okay. That would be like 7,000 to 8,000 points. Okay, 10% would be 4,000 points. Let's say 10%, 4,000 points. Okay. Then you have every major position there, likely it's going to hit a certain sell that the algorithm is going to sell automatically. And you have all of these hedge funds, all of these investment banks selling at once, and that causes an even greater crash.
Equities in all their tech positions. A lot of that panic feeling is you have to realize that the retail investment community has quadrupled, if not 10x, over the last couple of years. So that's a whole nother, those are the people who tend to panic and live with the fear mode when their profits look like they've been chipped away after the last 2 weeks.
All right, we were just showing, as you were speaking, Peter, some of these fall-offs in some of the big tech names like Apple and Amazon and all of that. That 6%, 4%, whatever you're seeing across the board was today. That was today. The airline drop that you see, 4% for Delta and United and Southwest, that is today. That is one day. You don't always see that. And that begged a question that I had, Peter Tuchman, with Robert Prechter, the socioeconomic watcher. He called the 87 crash, the comeback since. He's saying that people's nerves and anxieties are getting the best of them. And I just want you to respond to this, because he said this is going to be an opportunity that the Federal Reserve is going to realize it missed last week. Take a look at it.
Okay, so
the Federal Reserve had a wonderful opportunity last Wednesday to lower their Fed funds rate by a quarter point, and they didn't take it. I think that was a big mistake. I think there's going to be a surprise rate cut before the September meeting, because I think rates have started to fall even faster.
What do you think of that?
By the way, the Nikkei is down 500 points, 501 points as of right now. Coach O'Connor, thank you so very much. Greatly appreciated, Coach O'Connor. Thank you. Thank you for always watching. Greatly appreciated. To my super chat, thank you. Thank you, Coach. Greatly appreciated.
Should have been a cut.
You know what? Look, I think we missed an opportunity. I agree. But at the time, it didn't feel that way, because we did get those numbers on Friday. If we had gotten those numbers on Friday after the cut, we would have looked like that we were flip-flopping, and that we had known that the numbers were going to be disappointing. Now, I agree. We may, look, if this sell-off continues, we may have an emergency meeting of the Fed. We may have an emergency cut, whether it's 50, 60 basis point. That may happen if this erosion of the market continues for another couple of days.
So I don't understand something. Thank you again, Coach. My super chat, thank you. So everyone is saying Oh, Jerome Powell should have cut rates. By the way, Yellen and Powell stated that inflation was only temporary. This was in 2020, late 2021. Okay, then, of course, they were wrong. The point is, it's very likely Jerome Powell, if I know there's going to be a major crash and you know there's going to be a major crash, very likely he does also. Okay, and so he doesn't want simply more money to flood into a bubble that's going to burst. That's one way I'm looking at this. Because everyone's saying, well, the market wouldn't have tanked had he cut interest rates. But then more money would have flooded into the market, and then that would have made an even greater descent downward. So I don't know. It's just, we have global instability. It's getting worse every single day right before November 5th. In addition to inflation, record highs in credit card debt, consumer sentiment down, interest rates still high. Even if they cut rates, they're still high. And we have we have stimulus that's basically running out. The stimulus, inflated all of these markets. Commercial real estate is not doing well at all because the economy isn't doing well, and large corporations can't pay their rent. So you're seeing large corporations leave malls and shopping centers. And so this is bad news all around. Commercial real estate is a huge part of any bank's revenue and profit. So that's a huge problem on the horizon. There's a lot of problems, okay, which is why the market is almost certainly going to really crash right before November 5th, which cements Trump's victory.
But it was said this morning by one of the Fed presidents that we are not going to adjust our strategy based on 1 month's economic data. So they don't want to look like they're being bullied by the market. You know what I'm saying? So I think we have to let this thing this thing needs to marinate for a little bit and unwind. I think the next couple of days will be very telling. Are they going to react or overreact? But I agree with you. We may have missed an opportunity on Wednesday to cut it 1/4 of a point, and if that's the case, we may end up having to play catch up and end up doing an earlier cut than September and a bigger one than they expected. That's a possibility.
Yeah.
Why is Costco and Dollar Tree and Target and Amazon and McDonald's all doing poorly? Because the average American, everyone goes to these places and people don't have the money anymore. This is Biden's economy, but at least he's not mean. He doesn't write mean tweets like Trump. This is why the phrase, we can't have nice things. We can't have nice things. Because the sensibilities of Americans today mean more than their pocketbook. That's never happened before in the history of this country. People would always look at the economy and foreign policy and say, okay, the president, I don't like his personality. I don't care about his personality. I'll vote for this man because the economy's good and foreign policy's bad. The economy good and foreign policy's good. Trump had a great economy, great foreign policy, but he was mean. And so people said, we'd rather have a recession and a market crash and global instability and high interest rates and high inflation. At least we have a wonderful, charismatic Biden who is ousted by his own political party because he's so horrible. And then we have the vice president who picked a terrible possible VP.
And that could trigger panic in itself. What does the Fed see that we don't see? What do they fear that we didn't think they were fearing? All real dilemmas. Peter, thank you very much, my friend.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily.
The funny thing is, you're going to see here, every time they say, like, for example, Kamala Harris is up, I think, like, it's hilarious that she was up like 8 points in one national poll, and so she's up nationally like 0.2%, something like that. This is only going to exacerbate a market crash because the market is petrified of Democrats, okay? Because Democrats are insistent upon doing everything possible to harm the economy, which is what we've seen, okay? Which is why we have high inflation, high interest rates. It's 4 years into Biden's or Harris's or whomever's tenure. Okay, 4 years. Can't blame Trump. We had 1.4%, 1.14% inflation with Trump. Okay. Now they say, oh, it's only 4% or so, 3.5 to 4%. It's like, well, that's a lot more for food and energy. Oh, and guess what? Inflation is rising, and they want to cut interest rates. So they didn't want Powell didn't want inflation to skyrocket. Okay, either way, you lose. You either inflate the bubble further with interest rate cuts, or you allow inflation to skyrocket. This is the economy now, all because of mean tweets.
Hello, folks. Welcome to Kudlow. I'm Larry Kudlow. Big news today. Kamala Harris chooses Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her running mate. An equally big news.
They must be really confident. They must be really confident that they can, cruise to victory like 4 years ago in a very fair and neutral and wonderful manner. This is the worst VP pick of all time. Let's just continue.
News. Republican VP candidate and Senator J.D. Vance fires back. Senator Vance will join us in just a few moments. But first up, Bernie Sanders hitting 2 for 2 with the Democratic ticket, and that's the subject of the riff.
I was going to say Harris's VP makes Dan Quayle look like, George Washington.
So, VP Kamala Harris finally chose Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her ticket mate. He was the first choice of Senator Bernie Sanders, the avowed Vermont socialist. That may be all you need to know about Governor Walz and the ticket. It makes 2 for 2 for Senator Sanders, who strongly endorsed VP Harris to become the DNC standard bearer. Call it the modern Democratic Party. Just the other week, in the now infamous White Dudes for Harris Zoom call, Governor Walz said, and I'm going to quote directly, "One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness," end quote. Huh?
These Democrats who love socialism, they have more billionaires and more on Wall Street at least 4 years ago than Trump did. So this is what they don't believe. I was on the left my whole life, the far left actually. And I went to Trump because I was like, well, we had a great economy and an anti-war foreign policy. That is pretty much what the left was all about. Trump should be admired by all sides. He was a great president. But the thing is, if you care about CNN, MSNBC, if your life revolves around media, you can say, oh, I don't care. It's like, well, if you really just care about media, okay, if media loved Trump, most of the Democrats who despise him would love him too.
I don't know what that means. I mean, I'm a neighborly guy. I have a lot of neighborly friends I get along with. None of them are socialists, but I digress. I will say it's disturbing that he wants to ban fracking just as Kamala Harris does. Mr. Walz is in favor of the Green New Deal and all the woke climate change policies and price tags that go along with it. Just recently, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen put a $78 trillion price tag on all that. Plus, of course, there's a $32 trillion price tag on Medicare for all, nationalizing health care, supported by Mr. Sanders, Ms. Harris, and presumably Mr. Walz. I guess that means he agrees with the Biden-Harris administration about mandating EVs, whose rare earth mineral-based batteries principally come from China, even while most American folks want to hang on to their gasoline-powered cars. And additionally, it's reported that Governor Walz favors driver's licenses for illegals, which strikes me as a dangerous pathway to illegals voting. And he's a proud defender of sanctuary cities, of course. On economic policy, Mr. Walz is a big spender and taxer. His 2-year budget passed in 2022 had a 38% increase in state spending and a $10 billion tax hike, that according to the Committee to Unleash Prosperity hotline. His proposed budget for 2025 includes...
So Democrats, what was the calculus here? Democrats said if we don't get Minnesota, there's no chance for us. So Trump was actually doing quite well in Minnesota. So they say, okay, well, we've locked down Minnesota because we have the governor. Okay. I don't know. Okay, so, but then what about Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Virginia? Does that mean Virginia is going to go Trump because Youngkin is Republican? You know, I don't know what the political calculus is other than hubris, arrogance. They're very confident with a market crash on the horizon / we're seeing it in real time.
Major league tax hikes on successful earners, on capital gains, and on dividends. Importantly, the state of Minnesota has a 9.8% corporate tax rate, which is the highest in the nation. And it has a 10.8% capital gains tax, in third place just behind California and New York. So it seems that Governor Walz has the same disrespect for the economic power of business that Kamala Harris does. And that leads to perhaps the most important issue of all, the recession threat. Unemployment rising, manufacturing falling, consumer confidence shaky, housing in recession, consumer spending hanging by a thread. In recent days, stock
and record highs in credit card debt, which has helped consumer spending. Jeff, thank you again. Jeff, thank you for the super chat. To my super chat, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jeff.
Stock market crashes around the world, reinforcing recession fears. So, who do you trust to restore economic prosperity? Well, it sure looks like the Democratic team wants to punish businesses with much higher tax and regulatory penalties, even though it's businesses who hire workers and deliver paychecks. But the Republican team wants to strengthen business with lower taxes and regulations. In fact, my old friend and partner Jim Cramer has recently said, and I'll quote, "If you care about your paycheck, you go with Trump."
I have to find that from Jim Cramer. I have to find that. Let's go ahead and listen to some of the future President Donald Trump.
This morning, it just may be the most far left agenda in our country's history on a presidential ticket.
Because the Democratic ticket is now set. Governor Tim Walz's record in Minnesota includes everything from tax-funded health care for illegal
action to Governor Tim Walz joining Kamala Harris to go against you and J.D. Vance.
I would say my reaction is I can't believe it. I never thought this was going to be the one that was picked. I know him a little bit. I helped him very much during the riots because his house was surrounded by people that were waving an American flag. Doesn't sound like very bad people. And he called me and he was very concerned, very, very concerned that it was going to get out of control. They only had one guard. I guess it was at the mansion or at his house in some form. And he called me. I said, "What do you want me to do about it?" I was in the White House. He said, "If you would put out the word that I'm a good person." And I did. I put out the word. I said, "He's a good person. I hope everything's good." And everybody put down their flags and took their flags with them. But they took their American flags and their MAGA flags and they left. It was thousands of people. And that was the first time I said, "Wow, that's very interesting." And he called me back and he thanked me very much. That's my only thing I ever had to do with him. He's a very, very liberal man. And he's a shocking pick, and I'm thrilled. I could not be more thrilled.
Yeah, I mean, when they selected him, it's really a gift for you because this election is all about the issues, and all of y'all have records. You've been the president. We know where the economy stood. We know what your record is. We know what Kamala Harris's record is, and we know what his record is, and they are extremely progressive. Talk about how you're going to handle this on the campaign trail. Will you just really hone in on how they voted in the past?
Well, I am. I'm going to be doing that. What he wants. If you look at his record with no walls, no security, let everybody in, he's worse than they are. You know, nobody knew how radical left she was, but he's a smarter version of her, if you want to know the truth. He's probably about the same as Bernie Sanders. He's probably more so than Bernie Sanders. She is more so than Bernie Sanders. That's got to be your guide, Bernie Sanders, and that's not a great guide. But there's never been a ticket like this. This is a ticket that would want this country to go communist immediately, if not sooner. We want no security. We want no anything. He's very heavy into transgender. Anything transgender he thinks is great. And he's not where the country is on anything.
Mr. President,
this is a shocking. Let me tell you, this is a shocking pick, and I think it's very insulting to Jewish people, and I think it's very insulting to people that want security. I think it's very insulting to anything having to do with making America great again.
Mr. President, is it true that your team thought for sure that it was going to be Josh Shapiro? Because there was one reporter who was at a J.D. Vance event yesterday, and there were some flyers printed up talking about how J.D. Vance, rather about how Mr. Shapiro was a fraud and corrupt and a lying con man and stuff like that. So it sounds like you were ready to take on him.
That sounds like what you would say.
Well, look, I'm no big fan of Josh Shapiro. I know the state very well. I think we're leading pretty good in that state, but I would have said it would have been a better choice. I would have said others would have better choice. And interesting, just about all of them, except this one, is better than her. She is not nearly as good as the people she was looking at. I know them all in one form or another. And in fact, there was a poll done, and there were some studies done. She's the worst of the group, and she's the one that's leading it. Look at this decision. This is a really bad decision for the country. You know, ultimately, I want the country to have good decisions, because ultimately what we want is for the country to do well. The country can't do well with these two people. They're very similar, and you would have thought she would have reached out and got somebody that's got some different, because her record on security is horrible. She was a border czar, which she doesn't admit it now. The only thing they have going is the media will play off all of the bad things that happened during her term. She was so bad that 5 weeks ago, they wanted to remove her because she was unthinkable to be president. They were going to go with anyone. And then they were afraid that they would offend people if they did that. And all of a sudden, inch by inch, and then she ends up taking over. Now the same press that thought she was the worst vice president in history, which is true, going along with the worst president in history. And he went down after the debate, and there was nothing much they could do with. They tried to come back. Then they brought her in, and everybody said, it'll never be her. She's so bad. She's incompetent. And after they studied it a little bit, they realized it's not going to be so easy to do. So they say, well, look, the press is going to do whatever we want because the press is a rigged deal. The press is the media, outside of you people, of course, but the media is so they're trying to build her up to the next Margaret Thatcher.
He's 100% right. I mean, you can look at 2000 when it was Bush v. Gore, and CNN didn't care. Like, nobody really cared. They were just calling balls and strikes like umpires. They didn't care. Even in 08, you could tell media loved President Obama, but it was more like, okay, he's doing well because he is a good campaigner. He is good on the campaign trail. He is good at rallies or speeches. It wasn't this rabid, apoplectic attempt, this overt, biased, obviously biased attempt by media to just be in the tank for the Democratic Party, try desperately to prop up Democrats. I mean, when I was on the left, I remember, this will help Trump. This will help Trump. And then I was like, well, maybe Trump's a better candidate. If the truth about Democrats is going to help Trump, why not just report it and let the American people decide? Because on the left, journalists are like, well, we can't do this. It'll help Trump. We can't report on this Democratic scandal. We can't report that Trump actually did a good job. Well, it'll help him. Well, yeah, if the truth helps him, what's the problem? Or are you so invested in public relations and being an activist and not a journalist that you'd rather lie to the American people, lie by omission, almost always, and try your best to get a Democrat in office? It's like, also, a lot of the people who desperately want Democrats in office, they don't really, it's not like the economy is, their livelihood is not impacted. Media would rather have Democrats because media is they're primarily liberal Democrats. But more or less, the more chaotic things are, the more, oftentimes, the more money media companies make. The problem, however, is that the economy is so bad, you'll be seeing more layoffs, unfortunately, in media. The same companies that have sold their soul to try to destroy Trump will themselves, unfortunately, go bankrupt.
Liberal version, and I don't believe it's going to happen. I hear she's hasn't taken one interview. She would never do an interview like this. That I can guarantee with any network. She doesn't do interviews because she can't answer questions. I don't know how she debates. I heard she's sort of a nasty person, but not a good debater. But we'll see, because we'll be debating her, I guess, in the pretty near future. It's going to be announced fairly soon, but we'll be debating her. I'd like to see it on Fox, by the way. I would like to see it. My preference would be Fox, but we have to debate.
Do you have an announcement, Mr. Are you working stuff out behind the scenes? Because we haven't heard about it yet.
No, but I can tell you every network loves me very much right now. They love me very much. I've never been so loved by CBS and by ABC fake news. And by NBC. No, they're all in love with me now, so that, I say yes, because it's up to me, obviously, also.
But, on the debate,
the most important thing is we get debate. I think debates are very important, and I think she'll be exposed just like Biden was exposed. Nobody knew Biden was that bad, and then he was exposed during the debate, and they tried to have a series of comebacks after that, and they didn't work out too well, and they viciously overthrew.
What is Harris going to say about inflation, high interest rates, high inflation, stock market crash, record highs in credit card debt? How is she going to say this is better than record low poverty with Trump, record highs in household median income? We had a better economy with Trump. Fact. So what is her rebuttal? Okay. And then there's the international, catastrophe. What on earth is Harris going to say about what's taking place in the Middle East? Around the world, actually. There are now countries completely destabilized around the world. Okay. The State Department is supposed to have a policy for every country in the world. And now you're seeing more and more countries devolve into madness. So, I mean, how can she articulate and communicate that it's better now under Harris and Biden than it was under Trump? Pence was worthless. So it was just basically Trump.
Through him. I mean, he was overthrown in it, using every trick in the book. They overthrew him. It was pretty amazing, actually, to watch.
I want to come back to the debate. Just to close this up, you're in litigation with George Stephanopoulos on ABC. So there's right, and the judge says, this is good. The suit's going to go forward. So how could you go on ABC, especially if he's going to be one of the moderators?
Well, you could use that as an excuse. I could use that. I've said that. Is there a conflict? And, there might be George Slopadopoulos, and he's got problems, and, they've got problems. But if they're going to have I guess David Muir is going to be the host in that case. You have all the hosts.
So you have Democrats who are like, no, the insults. He didn't start a war. He didn't have a market crash. Yeah, you could say, oh, well, his last year in office, that was a deliberate attempt, or that was, I should say, blue state governors, very simple, for the morally superior, highly educated liberal Democrats who failed economics in 11th grade or 12th grade. Blue state governors shut down economic activity. They did not have to do that. If the rebuttal is, well, there was a consensus. The consensus was wrong. You should never have shut down economic activity when the average age of the U.S. labor force is 41 years old. And the average age of somebody who perishes from you-know-what is, 73 in some states? And so at least 1 year it was 73 in a couple of states, or a number of states. But the point is, then, of course, you went from record low in unemployment to approaching record highs in unemployment in a span of 3 months. So then, yeah, you had a market crash and it immediately rebounded, but that was an artificial, almost deliberately made market crash. This is based on 4 years of economic mismanagement. So it's a lot different. And so because Trump insults, there's like maybe half of the country that says, I don't want somebody who insults. Okay, good. Now you have terrible economy, terrible foreign policy. I'll take Trump's personality. He's hilarious. He's funnier than like a lot of most comedians nowadays. But what do I care if he insults? Trump doesn't have the luxury of every single publication writing a hit piece against his adversaries like Democrats do. So he comes up with funny names for people, and then, oh my God, the incivility, and then they set him up and accuse him of being a Russian operative. But yeah, I'll take Trump's personality. It's a million times better than Biden or Harris's, and plus we have a great economy. I mean, when did our country turn from an electorate that cared about the economy and foreign policy to an electorate that cared about civility, while other presidents had media going after their political opponents, and even worse when Trump came in office?
Those are pretty much named, and you have Brett and Martha, and they're great. And I'd love to see it on Fox, but it takes two to tango.
Well, maybe you get two. Maybe you get two debates.
Debate. Look, she doesn't want to debate. She wants to say, I don't want to debate, but I do want to debate. When it came to Biden, I accepted everything. I accepted Jake Tapper. I accepted everything because he didn't want to debate. After I accepted everything, the only thing I said, let's stand up. They wanted to sit down at a desk. I said, that's not going to look so great. So I said, but I accepted everything. And pretty much that's the way I do it right now because I want to debate her. I think it's important for the country that we debate. Now, where it is, I'm all for Fox. I'd like to see it on Fox. I think Fox would do a really good job. But
so we easily beat crooked.
All right, Mr. President, let's talk about some of the issues. Mr. Waltz, Governor Waltz, said this about you, that you don't understand kitchen table issues. Listen.
Donald Trump's not fighting for you or your family. He never sat at that kitchen table like the one I grew up at, wondering how we were going to pay the bills. He sat at his country club up in Mar-a-Lago, wondering how he can cut taxes for his rich friends.
Democrats kept Trump's tax cuts. They literally kept the tax cuts this man is disparaging.
Mr. President, what's your response to that?
Well, I think it's just the opposite. I think if you see...
And by the way, everyone's taxes were lowered. Everyone who pays taxes had their taxes lowered.
The vote. Those people are all voting for me, the people that he's talking about with the kitchen table. And I was not always sitting at Mar-a-Lago either, but I was sitting at lots of other places and built an unbelievable business, one of the greatest businesses. I built a business that is phenomenal. That's been really determined now how good it is. And, I could have a very simple life and a very good life and continue to do what I love. I love business and I love creating jobs. And that's what we're doing. We'll be creating jobs at a level that you've never seen before. If you look at our administration, the most successful administration from the economy standpoint there ever was. There's never been any administration that was even close numbers-wise. And by the way, they had inflation, the level which our country probably has never seen. They say you go back 72 years. Well, I think we probably never have seen inflation like that. And it's killing the same people that he's talking about. It's killing. Inflation has destroyed their administration, and they have no idea what to do about it. It's getting worse. And you had a crash the other day of over 1,000 points. It's a very bad situation that we're going in. We could end up in a depression if these people are reelected.
So let's talk about anti-Semitism. Van Jones had an interesting thing to say about anti-Semitism. He says this on CNN. It's just because he's a moderate. They're talking about Shapiro not getting the job. Or is there some anti-Jewish bias there? He goes, you also have anti-Semitism that's gotten marbled into this party. You can't be for the Palestinians without being anti-Jewish bigot. You have a 1-point lead over Kamala Harris among Jewish voters in New York. Your reaction to Van Jones and that poll?
I'm Jewish, it should be a 50, 60 point lead. So I don't understand it, but I don't really get into that. I don't get into that. I do understand it actually, but I don't even get into it. Should be a 70, 80 point lead.
Well, we're
not for them anymore because we
talk about her has driven the stock market down.
Yeah.
You know, when the stock market goes down,
bring down prices that are still too affordable.
Here's another soundbite of the current vice president talking about, on her watch with Joe Biden, things are just absolutely great, right? Watch.
In Pennsylvania, we fight for a future with affordable housing, affordable health care.
Affordable housing with double the mortgage rates, double mortgage rates. Mortgage rates are double they were under Trump. They're close to 7%, 6.5% to 7% now. They were at 3% with Trump, so over double. How is that affordable? But only Democrats would say it was affordable.
Affordable child care, paid leave. We fight for.
The market is crashing. You have like Amazon, McDonald's, you have businesses, corporations leaving Blue City, San Francisco, Oakland, Los Angeles, New York. And then it's the same thing of affordable care, affordable leave. It's like Democrats have a Pavlovian response to liberal ideology. They get so happy. It's affordable, and there's the word care in it. This is fantastic. It's amazing. Nothing bad is happening that actually is happening. The economy is literally crumbling before our very eyes. And then, of course,
Our future where we bring down prices that are still too high and lower the cost of living for America's families.
Okay, so there, she is co-pilot to Joe Biden. So while inflation and prices have been through the roof during their administration, now she's trying to put on a happy face about how we're going to turn it all around. Mr. President, I'm sure you've seen over the last week or so, her team has been leaking to the New York Times. All those things we used to stand for, we're not for them anymore because we've adopted all new policies. That's probably one of the reasons why she has not appeared on television. And so she's trying to appear more moderate to appeal to people in the middle, and she's getting away with it. The honeymoon for Kamala Harris, it must drive you crazy because it's still going on.
It does, and there's only one thing, because she's just talking about Pennsylvania. No fracking. That means your energy prices are going to go through the roof, but that means Pennsylvania is going to lose 500,000 jobs. More important than the 500,000 jobs, they're going to lose tremendous streams of money. She wants no fracking, and she wants no fracking. She's trying to say now that she wants, she's gone through every single thing that was a horror show, and she disavows it now. She disavows the no fracking. If she does no fracking, and she will 100% do it. One thing I've learned about politicians, and you people knew it maybe before me, but I've known it for a long time, their first thought is the thought that they end up doing. She's for no fracking. She's for defund the police. She was the original defunder of the police. She was the original no cash bail, cashless bail, which has caused havoc.
I don't understand the ideology. If you want to, for non-violent crimes, fine. But for violent criminals, I just don't get it. Why do you need to reform the system for violent criminals? Like, there's zero nuance with ideology on the left. Everything is just like full steam ahead. There's no nuance, no context. So there's a difference between shoplifting, okay, and, assaulting somebody. But to Democrats, it's the same thing, no bail. It's like, it makes no sense.
And look at how she's destroyed San Francisco. She started it out as the DA in San Francisco with policies that were so bad. It's a crime-ridden place. It went to the greatest city in America. It's a crime-ridden place right now. It's not livable.
No longer are you necessarily
to lose. Watch.
No longer are you necessarily keeping those private files in some file cabinet that's locked in the basement of the house. It's on your laptop, and it's then therefore up here in this cloud that exists above us, right? Mm-hmm. It's no longer in a physical place.
I am here, standing here on the northern flank, on the eastern flank, talking about what we have in terms of the eastern flank and our NATO allies, and what is at stake at this very moment.
The United States shares a very important relationship, which is an alliance with the Republic of North Korea. And it is an alliance that is strong and enduring.
You know, there's a lot of irrational exuberance.
We do? Okay. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, the judge in the hush money case, the recusal is going to be linked to what happens in the market the next, I would say, week and a half, 2 weeks. And then there might be a recusal right after a terrible market crash, late September, early October. Be safe. If you have your money in a very small bank, consider, I'm not telling you anything to do. I would consider, you know, my advice is worthless, but I would consider moving my money, if I had my money in a small bank, to a much larger, too big to fail bank. Because if we learned the top 5, 6, 7 banks in the country, they're not going to ever be allowed to fail. These much smaller banks, you don't know. You have FDIC protecting you, but then, you know, you're not assured that you'll be able to take out money if there's a bank run on a small bank. Anyway, hit subscribe. I'll do more work on the stock market crash channel tomorrow. The Nikkei is down today. Nikkei is down. Nikkei 225 down 400. Nikkei index. Yeah, Nikkei 225 down 400. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, hit subscribe. I'll see you tomorrow.